Distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press, I'd like to welcome you to yet another edition of our weekly press briefing here in the foyer of the Executive Mansion. On behalf of His Excellency Joseph Imam Boakai, Senior President of the Republic of Liberia and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. As you know, today is Friday, May 8th, the year 2026. However you're listening, wherever you're listening from, to those of you in the diaspora and those in the counties, we'd like to welcome you to our regular press briefing. The press briefing, as you may know, is our way of keeping you abreast with issues, with decisions and actions of His Excellency the President, his activities and what he intends to do and what he has done over the course of the period, particularly the week. It has been another busy week, from one engagement to the other, and notably amongst his engagement have been a meeting with the United Nations peace-building team that was in country, and that meeting really looked at where we are as a country. They received some updates, particularly the head of delegation, Ms. Kula B.N, and members of her delegation paid a visit here at the Executive Mansion, where they were able to update our President on the mission that included going in the counties and engaging other members and other leaders of our country. And the conversation here with His Excellency was to really also focus on what we have done so far, where we are on our peace-building initiatives, and also our peace-building drive, and specifically and particularly what the President has been engaged with. As you may know, and we started giving you updates and particularly talking about doing more detail or in-depth of some of the President's actions through editorials, something we started last week and we will continue today, to really look at a key issue, particularly on the issue of reconciliation, following our brief update. Part of our President's engagement also during this course of the week was with the United States Chargé d'Affaires, Ambassador Joseph Zadrozi. I hope I got the name right. That's a tongue-twisting name. Inclusive with our Minister of Foreign Affairs and the acting minister here, Honorable Bill Michael Jones, who were all in the meeting with His Excellency, our President. And particularly the meeting of the United States Chargé d'Affaires was to also congratulate our President on his recent award that he received from the University of California, the African Peace Award, as its 34th edition. And in addition to that, also with how we are faring, what we're working on, the President's mark of activities. And as you know, when the President got elected, he took some bold actions, inclusive of his reconciliation drive, what he's done so far, inviting members of the country in different consultative meetings, meeting with the youth community, meeting with different stakeholders, the legislature, the judiciary, and other members of the executive, but also the persons with disabilities and the women community. He's continuing on those initiatives, especially on the mark of his reconciliation efforts, but also by the reburial efforts of former presidents, and taking forward the step of, for the first time in our country's history, to really implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. As you can recall, Liberia started a bold initiative in 2023 to document the history of our past, the war years, the people who were involved, and the lives who were lost, to really take accountability and help or try to seek to right the wrong. More than a decade following, our president has taken on the reconciliation effort really boldly, by looking at the reconciliation, the report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and implementing some of those. One of which was the signing and operationalization of the Office of the War and Economic Crime Court. During his first year in office, the president did sign executive order to really establish the office. And since then, the executive order had been renewed and to really see and implement the mandate of the office. And during the course of the week, our president did receive draft legislations as an outcome of the action that he took. And those resolutions or those legislation will be forwarded to the legislature for onward actions. And those legislation will include the establishment of the War Crimes Court and the Anti-Corruption Court. Those two legislation, our president believes, will really help to, give people and families in the country closure on our long-standing history on what has happened. So the renewal of Executive Order 164 also culminated into the work they've done so far, that the team headed by Councillor Dr. Jala Babu and members of the civil society organizations, as well as other leaders, the traditional and religious leaders, members of the Interreligious Council, inclusive of the Muslim Council and the Liberian Council of Churches or the Christian Council, were all present at the meeting where the president received those draft legislation. Currently, the interest of the president is to really engage and onward forwarding those documents to the legislature, following a review by his legal team, and appropriately advise them on the different activities that should happen. And for the president, he believed that this really, he was really very moved that his interest is really not to just say we're going to prosecute people, but his interest is to tell the Liberian story, because the story of Liberia, and if you see what has happened, it's really, really sad, of people who were killed during the course of our civil conflict. And it needs closure. The country needs closure. And this effort of long lingered on, and he's taking a very bold step in righting our wrongs. Additionally, on yesterday, the president held his fourth cabinet meeting, which also happens to be his fifth sitting, because the third cabinet meeting was held in twofold. So this fourth cabinet meeting talked on a lot of very, very important things. And those of you who were present did listen to his opening remarks, where he gave a really broader context of where the country is, and where his vision is, and where he's moving with the country. But just to give you some update on the key conversation around the cabinet meeting on yesterday, following our press briefing last week, we did give you an overview of the president signing the Executive Order 163 that talked about structuring the issues relating to technology, the ICT sector, where the country herself has decided now with our president to really take information technology or the digital transformation to a whole new level. So yesterday's cabinet focused on that. There was a major update from the team, from the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunication, as well as the office that's in charge of our data, or what you will ITC or ICT. So particularly, there has been a bold conversation around the National Digital and Postal Address System, the president was very excited, something that had long been overdue, the postal address system that will really help to map the country using cutting-edge technology to really show where our country is, but also having our personal addresses in the system where it helps with mailing, it helps with transportation, it helps with moving from one place to the other, but it also helps to map out services in communities. So for example, where you have schools, where you have clinics or hospitals, you can document, and it helps policymakers to know where there lack thereof these very critical infrastructure. It will help the government to make strategic development decisions on those areas. So the team is expected to roll out the initiative in the country, where they will be having young people in general to go in the counties from homes to register your homes and give you particular address. So I'm sure some of you who may be following or are here, Liberia, when you talk about the country's postal system, one thing you remember or you recall when they tell you what's the address, we're still using 1000 Monrovia, 10 Liberia. I remember growing up in high school, that was our postal address code. Even up to today, that is what is still being utilized, especially in this 21st century. So the president and his team, particularly those in charge of the technological component, are really looking at really assessing that. So we have our district, our towns, our villages, our homes, they're all mapped out properly, and they're able to have a signed postal address system. And this particular system would really help to do a number of different things. For example, health information, education information, a number of different things, access, so the whole 9 yards. So the government is really excited. We will do a number of different things. We, from the arm of the communications architecture, to really be able to explain and have our people understand what this will mean. So you can stay at home, purchase your goods, purchase your food, do something, and before you look, your product or whatever you order will come at your doorsteps. As you know, those of you in the diaspora and other places, it's so seamless. We can stay home, order something, or you need services, or if you're in an emergency situation, you call the ambulance, you call 911 or other codes. You don't have to say, when you pass behind the house or you go to this other tree, all that. So this system will really help to put in easy access to information. It will help with our financial system, our taxation, property, real estate. And one of the other very important conversations that was had at the cabinet yesterday was to see how this can be incorporated to help with our land dispute. A number of times, even the president took some actions in relation to our land situation, where this can be incorporated in a way that a system can be built to document all of the land in this country, so that if you sold land to party S, you can go on that platform to resell that land if the person still have the proper documentation for that, to help reduce the crimes as relates to land dispute in the country. Also, on yesterday, the president did receive the National Data Governance Policy. It was discussed, as well as the National Cybersecurity Strategy of 2024-2026. It's been looked at. And the conversation around the Personal Data Protection and Privacy Act. I know last week, some of you were interested in knowing the security nature of this process, the digitalization, how secure it will be, and people's privacy, people's private information. So I can confirm to you now that it's in the works. The Data Protection and Privacy Act is something that the president is looking forward to. So, like I mentioned, it's very, very serious and essential to this conversation of digitalizing our entire system. And then also we had a conversation around where we stand when it comes to the national fiscal policy, that is the national budget. The budget, our budgetary document, the conversation around the supplementary budget that was passed, the priority areas, which was in the tune, and also with the current receipt of the International Monetary Fund support of 266 million resilience sustainability facility, and also a brief snapshot of where we stand when it comes to the fiscal outturn. And then another very important component of yesterday's meeting, cabinet meeting, was the work, if you can recall, last Independence Day, our president did charge the vice president with a task to really see the people in the business and private sector who are deliberately undercutting the country, making exorbitant prices, making profits on where that it shouldn't be. And that effort had yielded a lot of different results, inclusive of the reduction and sustained reduction of the price of rice in the market, and also the reduction of the price of eggs, as well as the price of flour. And the vice president and his team, including the Minister of Commerce and Industry and other stakeholders, the business community, were also very involved and active in those dialogues and conversations. So yesterday, the vice president did give an overview of what the situation looks like. And you know, it has been quite an interesting thing on the lips of policymakers to say, oh, Liberians need to be active participants in the economy. It's easier to say, but I can confirm to you all that this government, this president is doing all he can to make that a reality, where particular businesses that are reserved for Liberians be done by Liberians. If you go into our markets today, you will see and notice that foreigners or even aliens, businesses that should be reserved for Liberians are done by others, you know, and they're doing both retail and wholesale. So it makes it quite challenging. So there's efforts of our president to really ensure that Liberians themselves are involved and active. There's a very active conversation happening, and the discussions centered around showing that foreigners, or those who, and this is not to really be xenophobic, but to really be realistic on what it is, how Liberians themselves can get involved into the private sector, and some businesses be exclusively reserved. That update was made. The VP has really done some great job, and the president is happy of the work so far, and he's looking forward to continuing, you know, those efforts in terms of sustaining, you know, the momentum, but also in showing that it actually happens. One of the other things that the president is looking forward to is to see how Liberians themselves, Liberians in the diaspora, who are interested in doing some of these businesses that are reserved for Liberia, to really come and invest. Because for the Liberian, and once you invest in this sector, you have families, you have friends, and you're not going to leave, even if you build structures. You're not going to take up your structures, you're going to, you know, invest for long term. So the goal of His Excellency, our president, is to see how Liberians themselves can really get involved into, you know, doing these, you know, businesses, and encouraging partnership, encouraging collaboration, encouraging joint ventures, so that they can have investment opportunities in the sector. And he's really, really very happy of the work so far. This morning, or earlier this afternoon, that's why we even began our briefing a little behind schedule. But you know, when we come here sometimes and I inform you, oh, you guys be like, oh, the president is going here. When the president got elected, he embarked on a very important mission to introduce the country, introduce the government to partners. And some of our diplomatic relations with our long-standing partners were not in good shape when he took over. And particularly, I say this to mean, particularly our relationship with the People's Republic of China. And because there were challenges in that relationship, some of our projects that was agreed on, or some things that they were supposed to do, some of the projects were suspended, including the overhead pass that's under construction today, and others. And there were some new conversations that we had So when our president got elected, he embarked on a robust foreign policy mission to reconnect with the diplomatic community, with partners, and to see what we need to do as a country. So one of those engagements was in China, the People's Republic of China. He went to the meeting and met with the president of China, Xi Jinping. Interestingly, with the history between our president and the president of China, is the fact that those two leaders were both vice president when they had that engagement. They had a number of engagements, so they knew one another. So when he became president, it was really a very good relationship to be able to rebuild, especially on behalf of the country. And that meeting culminated into the activation of a number of projects you see today, but also starting up new one. One of such was the groundbreaking effort of the Liberia Broadcasting System complex. And that complex, the president of Xi Jinping agreed, and the People's Republic of China agreed to really support Liberia on a number of different fronts. And this morning, I'm happy to announce, I'm sure those of you followed, the dedication of that facility. And the facility includes cutting-edge technology, over 7 studios, including radio studios, television studio, as well as someone who say music studio, where you will do your music recording, a recording studio. So there won't be a need for you to go to Ghana, go to Nigeria, or other places, so you can record your music right in Liberia. This is very important, especially today. You see a lot of young people interested in the arts, in content creation. You can use the LBS studio. You don't have to pay transportation or airfare. You have a composition, you have very clear system and high-level technology that will help you, record your music, record your content, and then you can use it for whatever purpose you're intending to use it. And this is one of the reasons why when our president travels to these countries and he visits, those places, it is important that we understand that his mission is to see how, those work. And is by that I mean the president really with the ambassador today after the dedication of the facility, so that this is a great effort, and these things are happening in under 2 years. Under 3 years. This is 2 years in very few months. January, today we're in May, so few months. And a lot will happen. The different project will continue. I'm sure those of you who go through the Pinsdale side, you see the active nature of the overhead pass road that's going on right now, and the Chinese team working really fast on the different project. And there's also the laboratory project that's happening at the 14th Military Hospital. So a number of different things are happening, and these are all part of the president's visits when he travels, and the team from our friends from Korea. When our president visited to South Korea, they will be coming soon in country to begin implementing different programs that are intending to work from the agriculture side, from job creation and other initiative that is currently going to happen. So I want to encourage all of you who have followed through that this president that we have is a man of his word. He's someone who's looking forward to developing our country more than where he met it, like he always says. For him, it's not about the elections, because every now and then you hear people say, oh, yeah, 2029 coming, we'll see this. But for him, it's not really about 2029. It's not even about the next election or elections following. He always says it's about the future generation. So by that I mean the president will, on tomorrow, leave the country to travel to Nairobi, Kenya, on the invitation of President Emmanuel Macron of France for the Africa-France Summit to really talk about the different issues. Our president was in France recently, and part of that, President Macron did invite him to attend this, and in continuation of their bilateral conversations and discussions on some of the different things that they're intending to do. So he will leave on tomorrow and return. He's there for 3 days, and he will return to the country following the engagement in Nairobi. Part of that meeting in Nairobi will to also really see where we are. Liberia right now plays an important role on the Security Council as a non-permanent member, and he will endeavor to update his colleagues on what we've done so far in our contribution to the discourse as it relates to peace and security. So in conclusion, like I mentioned, we'd like to look at President Boakai's reconciliation drive, advancing justice, healing, and national unity, an editorial of our office in the Department of Public Affairs here at the Ministry of State. Since assuming office, His Excellency President Joseph Boakai Sr. has placed reconciliation, justice, and national healing at the center of national governance. At a time when Liberia continues to confront the painful memories of our civil conflict and the lasting impact of division and mistrust, the President has taken practical and deliberate steps aimed at moving the country forward toward unity and national and broader closure. Among the most significant actions under his leadership is the signing of the executive order on the establishment of the Office of World Economic Crime Court, and also the renewal of the mandate of the office through Executive Order 164. These actions reflect the government's determination to advance key recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report and strengthen Liberia's pursuit to accountability and justice. The President's recent receipt of the draft legislation for the establishment of the World Economic Crime Court and the National Anti-Corruption Court marks another important milestone in Liberia's reconciliation journey. These efforts are intended not to only address the issues connected to the country's conflict years, but also to reinforce transparency, accountability, and respect for the rule of law. The President also has demonstrated leadership through symbolic and national healing initiatives, including the dignified reburial of former president, including President Samuel Kanyando and President Talbot. The expression of an official apology on behalf of the state to victims and the families affected by years of conflict and instability. These actions carry deep national significance and represent efforts to acknowledge the past while ensuring or encouraging Liberians to move forward as one people. The President's reconciliation drive has extended beyond policy and executive actions. He has continuously engaged various sectors of the Liberian society, including members of the legislature, the judiciary, civil society, women groups, youth organizations, persons with disabilities, traditional leaders, and faith-based institutions. His administration recognizes that sustainable peace and reconciliation required inclusion, dialogue, and national participation. Also, in a spirit of unity, President Boakai has also maintained and tried to engage former presidents and national leaders and policymakers as well as stakeholders, including his last year unification effort to make contact and engage with former President George Weah, and engaging or having a conversation with former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, political leader of the Alternative National Congress, Alexander B. Cummings, and other leaders, on initiative intended to strengthen national cohesion, peaceful democratic operations. These engagements demonstrate that reconciliation is not a one-time event, and he looks forward to continuing his engagement with former leaders, but also as an ongoing national progress and process that requires collective efforts and stewardship, as well as statesmanship. The international community have also recognized and have taken notice of all of President Boakai's efforts. The efforts, including the role in advancing reconciliation and peace building, has earned him the African Peace Award from California, the United States of America, recognizing Liberia's continued progress toward healing and democratic stability. This recognition reflects not only the president's leadership, but also the resilience and aspirations of the Liberian people. The government believes that reconciliation is in the interest of every Liberian and essential to building a peaceful and prosperous future. Liberia's path towards both peace and reconciliation must be guided by justice, inclusion, dialogue, and mutual respect. President Boakai will continue to ensure that his actions continue to signal a national desire to unite the country, strengthen democratic institutions, and ensure that the future of Liberia and future generations inherit a more peaceful and stable country. As the reconciliation process continues, the administration remains focused in fostering unity and creating opportunities for all Liberians to participate in shaping the future of the country. This is to mean that we do understand that there are political figures in our country who have deliberately tried to dampen the president's reconciliation credential. And we say this to mean that our president is a very peaceful president, and he continues to engage and do his work and reconcile our country. He's not going to listen to what you call the noise in the market. He will continue to do his work. And for him, the work he's doing on reconciliation is most important to the country, to the people, and to the agenda he pleases and he wishes to undertake. So thank you all so much. We take your questions, should you have any, and have a wonderful Friday. Good afternoon. As always, you state your name, the institution you represent.
Good afternoon, I'm PBS. My name is Brent Sa, and I report for a newspaper. I want to know, there are citizens who are still concerned concerning the issues in Lofa between Liberia and Guinea. How is the border issue between Liberia and Guinea as of now? As one, do we still have Guinean soldiers on the Liberian soil? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Press Secretary. My name is Moses, and I report for Lux FM, the University Radio. You talked about the Vice President giving the President report on setting aside businesses for Liberians. I'm wondering, since you say Mr. President embraced the idea, how does the government intend to ensure that this is fulfilled? Because the question here, or the argument now is Liberian businesses are not that empowered to engage some of these businesses exclusively. What is Mr. President thinking to ensure that these businesses or Liberian-owned businesses are empowered to take over those responsibilities? The next question on PPS. Some months back, when I asked about Liberia's position on who to support in the upcoming UN Secretary General elections, you said the president is still holding consultations. Are we still making consultations? Are we still doing consultations? Haven't we had a side since we already know the names that are already popping up for the UN Secretary General position? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam PBS. My name is Lois Pebe, and I report for Punch TV Live. Concerning the War and Economic Crown Court, the President just received the draft, and as we all can recall, this issue of inquiry says the President took over the establishment of the War and Economic Crown Court. How soon should the Liberian people expect the whole stuff to take immediately effect? How soon? Because some are saying that we have been hearing the War and Economic Crown Code. We are yet to see the implementation of the War and Economic Crown Code. How soon should the Liberian people expect this to take effect? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good afternoon, Madam Press Secretary. I'm J.H. Webster Clay, and I report from East African newspaper. Still on the War Crime Code, it's 23 years since the end of our civil conflict. Many of the perpetrators have all died. Major perpetrators have all died, including the likes of Prince Johnson. Many librarians are of the notion that the War and Economic Crime Code, especially the War Crime Code, is not a pressing issue as the moment. Has the government been able to reach out to librarians to get their feedback whether the issue of War Crime Code should be a priority for government? Thank you.
Thank you, Webster. That's a great question. I can tell you that since the establishment of the Office of the War and Economic Crime Court, the office have been working and engaging key sectors and stakeholders in the country. They've done consultations with a cross-section of the Liberian people, traditional leaders, women's group, youth group, women's NGO secretariat, and women's organizations, and a number of supports they've garnered so far, they've gotten, and they have said that the need for the support and the need of the establishment of this group is even long overdue. Liberians are ready. If you saw the legislation, the draft legislation that was submitted, the group came inclusive of the office, a cross-section of Liberians, the women's organization, the traditional leaders, civil society organizations, they're all behind this initiative. For them, it's really not about individual per se. It is about the collective storytelling and accountability of the country Liberia. Because the justification for our wars, people need to be accountable. And for His Excellency the President, he was very clear. It's not about targeting individuals, but it's about telling the Liberian story to giving Liberia's closure. So whoever, this will say, and to say, majority of the people have passed away. The team at the Office of the World Economic Crime Court, they're working really very hard to have, the TRC did a great job. They have a list of all those, and the mandate of the office will definitely do the work that they have to do. And wherever they believe in the next stage now, it is to go to the national legislature. That's why it is a draft legislation. So the president, after his team has worked on the document and review and engage and consult, will definitely be forwarding the document to the legislature, and then the legislature now will take over from there. And the legislature, it is our expectation that they will not just pass the law without also again engaging into public hearing and bringing key stakeholders to the table. Because of course the legislature also did a resolution on the same work around the World Economic Crime Court. So definitely this is not something that is about targeting individuals, but it's about telling the Liberian story. It's about giving Liberia closure. It's about documenting and accounting for the wrong that happened. So for generations that will come after, and for people who will think that you can do things in this country and go free, it's not going to happen. So exactly, the office is working really hard with our president and the legal team to move on to the next stage. I will also encourage you to see what the executive order that was signed by His Excellency the President have done. On the question of how soon will the court begin, question from his voice. Again, it's a process. The process is that the president have received the draft legislation. He will work with his team to forward it to the legislature. The legislature will do what is required by law within the legislature. And the legislature will then decide the next stages and course of action. And then by that now, we will see what will happen. On the question of the United Nations Secretary General position, again, Liberia is a country that's part of Africa that will also consult our team with the leadership of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and others involved are still engaging. Should Liberia decide to throw a support behind, officially we'll let you know, but Liberia will not stand alone. Liberia will align with the region. Liberia will align with ECOWAS. Liberia will align with the African Union and other key stakeholders to really support. Because for Liberia, it is not just a Liberian thing. It is not just for Liberia. It is for the entire Africa. Because like I mentioned to you before, Africa is looking forward to key positions within the United Nations. And to really restructure, relook at the United Nations by ensuring that Africa has a lot of voice on the United Nations security, on the United Nations generally. So Liberia will also play a key role in that. Whether Liberians are empowered enough to take over when it comes to the Liberianization, again, there are a number of different ways. Of course, there are some Liberians who are very active and engaged in the Liberian economy. There are some Liberians who are doing businesses, but there are also ways in which governments can support and incentivize businesses in Liberian businesses to be able to invest in those key sectors. And yes, it is something that the president is unbending about. He's really very clear on ensuring that Liberians get very active in the economy and do what needs to happen. On the question of the crime, the border issue, whether there's still Guinean soldiers on the Liberian side, I cannot deny nor confirm that they are soldiers or they're not soldiers. But I can tell you that the engagement has not ended. There's still ongoing discussions and engagement from our side, from our diplomatic side, with the president and his team, engaging the Guineans. But there have been a number of engagements with the communities as well that are there. So it's still an active conversation, but all means that have been asserted is diplomatic means that have been asserted to ensure that there's not any form of escalation and that the situation is under control. I think those were your key questions, except I'm missing any. Yes.
All right, yes, the War and Economic Crimes Court draft bill has been received by the president and will be forwarded to the House of Legislation. I want to know if the House of Legislature delays or rejects the bill, what alternative steps will the administration take to ensure accountability and justice? That's one. Lastly, the president dedicated a brand new broadcast building for the Liberal Broadcast, LBS for short. What safeguards will be introduced to ensure that anti-corruption prosecutions are not used as political tools against opponents?
Anti-corruption prosecution, can you restate your last part? And how does that relate to LBS?
Yeah, I want to know how will the station be used or safeguard to introduce or ensure that anti-corruption prosecutions are not used as political tools against opponents?
Okay. In fact, I'll start with your last question. One of the things that the president said during the program earlier today was that his goal have never changed as to ensuring that LBS becomes a public broadcaster. And by that, he meant that LBS will, right now there should be a legislation ensuring that LBS becomes a public broadcaster. Because LBS right now is still being run and operated under a decree. And the president's mission and goal to transform communications and broadcasting is to have it open that opponents, inclusive of people who do not agree with him, that free speech is upheld, that people are welcome and open to criticize his actions and inactions, and that they can also be allowed, once they're doing it in the confines of the law, be allowed to use the public broadcaster. And you've seen people, since this administration has taken over, There have been oppositions, if you will, or people who do not agree with the government have been given opportunity to sit on the public, on LBS, for example, to criticize the administration without any reprimands, without any specific actions, and just come and talk your own. The other person come and tell their story and move. We've seen, without even calling names, we've seen figures, key figures from the opposition. Congress for Democratic Change. We've seen figures from other political parties. We've seen figures who principally disagree with the administration come and sit on the LBS. So for the president, his interest is to work with the Liberian people. So whether or not he criticizes, up to you. And he said that today, and he very clear on continuing on that, talking about whether or not it is rejected. Well, there are procedures on our laws when the executive submits a bill to the national legislature. There are procedures. They have the right to decide how they're going to do it. But I don't believe that the legislature will outrightly reject the law. If they do, there are procedures in which they have to follow. So as at yet, we are at the stage where the draft legislation have not left the presidency to the legislature. So let's see, once the president does that and send it to the legislature, we'll give you an update, and then let's see what actions will be taken. But the hope is that because, prior to now, the legislature itself, they did do a resolution in support of the process of establishment of the World Economic Crime Court, and majority of the legislators, both houses, they signed the resolution. So it is our hope that something that they signed in the past, that they will not deviate when it comes to actually putting pen to paper or getting the action that was required in the first legislation. And of course, the anti-corruption court is something very necessary, because the anti-corruption court goes beyond the lifespan of the executive order and the lifespan of the process of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and the lifespan of everything that we do. So if there is an anti-corruption court that is established, and there are people who are found guilty or liable, or who are accused of economic and other financial crimes, can go through the anti-corruption court and have due process and have their day in court and be able to confront, the accused, the accuser, and the whole 9 years. Even now with the LSC, some of the reasons why you have some of the cases that go to LSC is taking a longer time, because the process of investigation, getting evidence, and doing all of that, even though LSC is not a court, LSC has a quasi-judicial power, but sometimes with those processes, it makes it slower. So if you have a full court, which this draft legislation will address, will help fast speed, the corruption cases so that justice can be served. So that is why the anti-corruption court bill is also important. And those two legislation, once the president legal team reviews it and finalizes it, will forward it to the legislature for onward action. And we hope that at the national legislature, they can put some speed on it to ensure that it happens. Yes, Bill.
I just want to make something clear. You said the president is traveling to Kenya for the France-Africa Summit. An invitation given to him by the French president, Emmanuel Macron. I want you to make a little clarity on that. Will it be held in Kenya or France?
Well, I just said he's going to Nairobi, Kenya. The president is traveling to Nairobi, Kenya. So it's the Africa Forward Summit. Normally, this is a summit between Africa and France, where the meeting of ministers and engaging different high-level leaders to really look at the relationship between Europe, or pretty much bigger Europe, inclusive of France, and Africa. And this summit, our president will address the summit. He will engage different meetings, and he will also have a meeting with his counterpart, President William Ruto of Kenya, as well as President Macron. And the United Nations Secretary General is expected to be in that meeting, Mr. Antonio Guterres, as well as the chairperson of the African Union. So pretty much this is really a bilateral and multilateral conversation around Liberia's, because as I mentioned, Liberia's role right now at the level of the United Nations Secretary General as a non-permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council is very important. So this meeting will also talk about what we've done so far and engaging bilateral conversation on what needs to happen, and but also activating some of the conversations that we had in France with our president and the president of France.
When are we expecting the president to return?
The president leaves on tomorrow. He's in Nairobi up to the 12th of this month, and then by the 13th, he's going to be back to the country.
The last question, how many individuals are leading the president?
There are very few officials of government who are leading right now. With the conclusion of flight and ticketing, the numbers around now more than 6 officials of government will go. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful Friday evening. Good afternoon from my end.